Welcome to another episode of The Giant Leap. Today we are getting a VIP ticket into the mind of a man who's spent the last 15 years carving out a career completely on his own terms. He's a folk singer, a storyteller, a festival legend, and someone who proves that success doesn't have to come from following the rules. His music is raw, honest, funny, and often deep. And so is the way he approaches his life.
McAllister, aka Beans on Toast, welcome to the show.
Thank you. What a lovely intro.
Well, it's all true, all true. How are you doing today? Having a good day?
I am having a lovely day. Yes, it's still 11 a.m., isn't it? So not much of the day has passed, but it's been great so far. Yeah.
In a
Got my daughter off at school.
We're like a midday. We're pretty much at midday. But for a musician, you're just getting started.
Okay. Well, I mean, hang on. I've been up since 7. I dropped my daughter off at school. Lizzie, my wife's in Scotland at the moment, so it's just me and Ren. But yeah, dropped her off at school. Got set up my microphone on my computer here because my computer's seen better days. So yeah, but it's been a fine day.
Nice. So let's start with what got you into music in the first place. Was there a moment when you thought, this is it, this is what I want to do?
It was quite a slow process, I think. It was always, I'm not sure if there's one standout moment. Maybe when I wrote my first song, perhaps. But I mean, we was like, the way I started getting into my first band, we basically formed the band before we could play any instruments or had any musical knowledge whatsoever. It was just 3 of us in school. We was like 15, and we was just like listening to like Placebo and Nirvana and all the kind of grunge bands and whatnot. And it was like, right, let's just, we just started telling everyone we was in a band, came up with a name, graffitied it all over the school, and everybody just believed us. And we just seemed like, oh, what are we going to do now? I guess we'll get some instruments and actually start the band. But it started off, yeah, just in sort of with language. It was like, yeah, we're in a band. Just couldn't believe that everybody believed it. And so we sort of followed through. And from that, I kind of knew we sort of divvied out who's going to do what. And I knew that I wanted to have the mic, basically. Not necessarily because I'd ever really sung before, but more because I was just sort of like interested in what the band was going to say. Yeah. And so I started writing songs for that. I mean, like, just to put it into perspective, I think we had 5 songs as a band before we knew that you had to play the bass and the guitar had to play in key with each other. I used to come up with a riff. Jot, the bass player, had come up with his own riff, and Dave would come up with a drum beat, and we'd just all play it at the same time. And and I'd kind of shout stuff over the top. And there was, I don't know where there was people around us. We even played a couple of gigs with these songs, and no one was like, "What the fuck are you doing?" People was clearly surrounded by very encouraging people, or maybe just no one had the heart, to tell us. But when we wrote our first song where me and Jot played the same thing, and fucking hell, to our ears, it sounded like, what a breakthrough. It was like. And we sort of thought we'd conquered something really big, but actually we just found the very first step towards putting a song together. But yeah, I guess maybe like the writing process for those songs, I'd sort of like writing the lyrics. Remember the first song I wrote was called "This Is the Fish," and it wasn't about anything. It was just sort of like words that I thought sounded cool, sort of thrown together. But it was something about creating something out of nothing, which is still the power, it's still what blows my mind. And what I love about songwriting is that, 1 minute this thing doesn't exist. And then however long it takes you to write it, sometimes you can write a song in like 20 minutes, and then there's after you've written this song, there's this potentially very powerful thing, that now exists in the world that you didn't need any physical thing to bring it to life. And so there was a process about that when the band sort of fell apart in my early 20s, I always knew that whatever happened, I'd always continue songwriting, and and I have basically.
I think it's so cool, like from a business perspective, that you kind of sold the idea first, because most people would have got into the music and like learning the instrument and then never got to anywhere. But you sold the idea first, which in business, like, that's the key.
Right,
You
yeah,
got
fair
to
enough.
sell the
Yeah, find out
idea.
whether people want it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then go, oh my God, we've got demand. We've got to learn our instruments fast.
So you knew,
Right, yeah,
like,
because people are like, when's your first gig? We're like, well, we'll fucking find out. Like,
yeah.
We better work at this.
So you did that
Yeah.
like the perfect way round. It's hilarious that you did that at such a young age.
Yeah, I've not really thought about it that way, but I guess you're right.
You've built your career completely outside of the industry machine. What's the biggest advantage of doing it your own way, and what's the biggest challenge?
Well, I think the reason I was in a very, very unique position, and that was basically, so what happened? We had that band, and we did all right. Like we released a cut once we learned out how to play chords and shit. Like we signed like a small record deal, and we put out an album, and we sort of like we moved to London. And I was like, at that point, I gave up. I was very driven then as a kind of in my sort of 18, 19. I was like, we was all working shitty factory jobs in Essex. And I was like, I made, the whole band, we worked our fucking asses off so that we could get out of Essex, get into London, and not for anything apart from the band. We moved down for the band, and I was there, and my job, I sort of felt then, was one, sort of like inserting myself within the music industry, like even just knocking on doors of record labels, like, and stuff like that, getting a demo about, and sort of like getting to know it a little bit, and then also getting people to come to the band's gigs, and I was like, I was happy to sort of like generate a bit of excitement around the shows. And when the band sort of fell apart, that energy, basically the bass player moved back to Essex, and me and the drummer, we stayed in London, and we naturally fell into promoting gigs and clubs, basically. And so I took that energy, I started just flying for other people, and then before you know it, we was running like every Friday night. We had a night at the Garage in Highbury, Islington, and that moved to the Mean Fiddler. Saturday nights for through my 20s, I used to run a club night for 1,000 people every Saturday night. It paid well. It meant I knew, and that would have we had everyone from, I don't know, like Baby Shambles, the Maccabees, Jamie T, Florence and the Machine. Everybody played at this club, right? So I was sort of like, it was a very exciting time for London and like music at the time. So I was sort of right in the middle of all of that, and it also gave me, from that club, and then also I started getting involved in music venues. Then at the time I moved in above a venue in Holloway Road and started running a venue, and I was making a living from doing the clubs and doing the thing, but I was still self-employed. I could do whatever I wanted. And that's when I started doing Beans on Toast. So no one could tell me. It was basically like I could do whatever gig I wanted, and I didn't have to get paid for it. And so I didn't need to pin down a job. The job that I was pinning down was helping me be a songwriter. It was getting me gigs. There was, at the venues I was running, if people didn't show up, I'd play, like if I'd do Beans on Toast nights and blah, blah, blah. So it was like, it was sort of double bubble. But I didn't need anybody's help, and I didn't need it to pay financially. If someone offered me a gig in Glasgow for 50 quid, I could take money from the club, go up there, play it, and come back. And that happened for years. For years I ran the venues while I was doing it. And over the course, it's just finding, especially when you make, the music that I make isn't for everybody. Yeah, it's like, so, but there is a certain amount of people out there that are going to like it. It's just going to take you time to find that crowd. And by having the sort of financial backing of my other work without having to pin down a 9 to 5, I was on this thing where I could play all these festivals for next to nothing, for exchange for free beer or whatever, and take on gigs and tours and whatnot for best part of 7 years. And over the course of that, slowly the bookings started paying a little bit more, like it became a bit more of a realistic thing. And then by the time, I think it was my ninth album that I put out. And then it was like, and it was a bit of a, like I started doing less stuff for venues and more stuff, started bringing in a bit more, like realistic money from gigs and whatnot. And then it literally wasn't until my daughter was born that it was just like, right, I haven't got, because I was always very busy, with the two things firing away.
Yeah.
But I was just like, I don't have any time to raise a child by doing that. So I stepped away from the venues and then concentrated more on how we was doing Beans on Toast. Again, I do it with my wife, like at this time we'd left the record label. So it was just like, okay, we was putting out, Extra Mile were great, but I'd learned how to do it myself. So we stepped away from the record label, self-released. I wrote my first book, self-published that, and then just stepped away. And at that point, after even potentially like 10 years of having financially backing myself, I'd found an audience and found a crowd that I could then be independent and go out and do it that way. So that's I think that's the unique position.
It's so smart how you were getting paid by someone else while you were networking the whole time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, well, it wasn't even as it sort of was that, but I would never have used that sort of language.
No.
It was just, I also enjoy the music industry. That's always what I wanted to be involved in, and it was more like, I was definitely on the kind of, like on the putting on gigs and parties and bands, rather than the kind of, the corporate edge of the music world where, sort of record deals and stuff like that. It was much more just sort of like, we was just trying to create good spaces, really, certainly with the venue and the club, and and then that was just a good place to give birth to what I wanted to do sort of musically as well.
I want to take you back to that point when you were in your band and you're in London, and you said, you're knocking on doors and you're going, you took it on yourself to go to the record labels and go and get your name and everything out there. There's loads of people that are in bands that do the whole thing at school. I was one. I was in a band at uni and at school. It didn't even cross my mind to go and knock on the doors of the record. It didn't even come to my mind. So what is it that made you stand out and go, right, I want this success. I want this for us. What's the difference?
I didn't think it just seemed pretty obvious to me, to be honest. It's just like, we've got these songs, like what, and also it was a great laugh. It was surprisingly easy. The first record label was Food Records, and that used to be right in Camden. And they signed Blur and had all these great acts. And we literally just buzzed in and said, we did our research. I don't know where, because it was pre-internet, but we read through music, man. We probably knew the name of some A&R guy, maybe from like a Blur article in NME or something like that. But we just sort of buzzed the door and was like, "Hi, it's Jellicoe. We're here to see Andy." Blah blah blah. And they was just let us in. Before you know it, we literally sat on the sofa, just chatting to the A&R guy. A&R people wanted, they wanted to meet bands. And we went into Radio 1, just walked in and said, "Oh, we're here. We want to see John Peel." And the woman at the desk was just like, "Oh, you've literally just missed him." She was like, "But you can leave something in his pigeonhole if you want." So we sat there with the woman on reception and wrote this really nice letter with her help as well. And we was like, "Claire at reception said you'd definitely read it, and she'd promised she'd listen to our music, blah blah, all this." And John Peel rung me up like 6 weeks later at my family home, and asked permission to play it on Radio 1. And that in turn took a while, but it led to us doing like a Peel session and stuff like that. So it's just like, I don't know whether it was the first trip that we went, because the first time we went down, we ended up with gigs, interest from labels and being played on the radio. So it was like, well, that was worth it. I don't know whether it was an element of success at trying, that then sort of, if we went there and everyone was like, "Fuck off, mate, no one wants to hear your band," and no one followed up with any of the stuff that we'd dropped off, or then maybe it would have been a different story. So I guess there's an element of having something good to offer as well. The band that we have, I wouldn't be that proud of I am proud of the music that we made, but it wasn't I was singing in a high-pitched American accent, basically. And I think if I was an A&R guy, I would have been like, what is this? You know, but a
Yeah.
lot of the bands were doing that at the time.
So where's the name Beans on Toast come from?
That was actually a bit through this, like the other band. So I was used to sing in this high-pitched American accent for this grunge band. And like I said, all the bands in Essex at the time were kind of doing that. And it felt natural, even though it was clearly not natural. And it was once the band had finished and I was sort of writing songs, it was a friend of mine. This guy I met at a party, actually. I met this guy at a party and ended up living in my house for I think about 6 weeks, but a great musician. And I sort of do owe him because I was playing him some songs I wrote and he was like, why do you sing in such a stupid voice? I was like, what do you mean? That's how I sing. And he's like, it's not how you talk. It's not anything to do with you. And he was like, it really struck home because it was like, fuck, like didn't have a crisis of identity, but I was like, he was right. I was like, the person that I am when I'm singing bears no relation to who I am when I talk. And there was that. There was also, I got into this guy called Chris TT, a London songwriter at the time, and who was very English in the way he sang, and from the south of England. So I was sort of like, as a reaction to that, I started writing these songs that were a little bit like, all right, mate, what you doing? Blah, blah, blah. And I was sort of determined to let everybody know that I was it, to be true to myself and to be English. And so the name started through that, basically. I mean, I wrote the songs. Initially, I wrote the songs and I came up with a name for a band. I imagined starting a band because that's how I'd done it before, and I'd sort of the initial things with that, and it was at Glastonbury. I had like 5 or 6 songs sort of floating around in my head, and I was just at this a little tent, a banyan tree tent, tea tent it was called, and it wasn't like an open mic or anything like that, but it was just a pretty laid back scenario. And this guy had been playing these like folk songs, and he stepped off the stage, and the guitar was there, and I just sort of like in the spirit of Glastonbury, I was like, "Do you mind if I get up and do a couple of tunes?" And a lot of the first songs that I wrote were like festival songs as well, because I was doing so many festivals at the time. And so it was just like I stood up and sung a song about getting hammered at a festival to a bunch of hammered people at a festival. And
Perfect.
and these new songs were really lyric based, and with their sort of Englishness, I'd sort of landed on this really lyrical based stuff. And so when when I started singing these songs, I mean, they just went down a treat. And I was like, by the end of the first song, I was like, I'm not going to start a band at all. This is it. This is what I need to do. And I think that's also been another huge blessing. When I say about the unique opportunity, like if you imagine new bands starting out, like how do you get 4 or 5 people that can go and do that 50 quid gig in Glasgow, or go on tour for next to nothing, or, play a festival just in exchange for beer and whatnot. So like not having anybody else to worry about from the minute I made that decision, everything became easier. I'd also at the time with the clubs and stuff, I used to manage bands as well. So I'd seen what like it's like getting 5 people to agree on an album cover, for example. Yeah. And it was nice just to be able to go like, album cover is done. It's how I want it to be. It's done. I'll send it off. Bang. I mean, to be honest, all my album covers literally just the name written down. But nonetheless, there's been no, no pushback from that. And that's the same with anything. A decision needs to be made. I can make it super quick. And that's helped with the fact that it turned into being such a kind of having such a prolific output and and being so kind of consistent in that.
Was there ever a time when you thought maybe this is not going to work?
I mean, probably like I think like there's probably like there would have been moments in it where it's like this part of it isn't going to work. I mean, I think it's sort of inherently, certainly this far down the line, even if people stopped coming as regularly as they do to, the tours that I do and it turns out there's a lot less people that want to come out and see see me play, I think I'll just play in a smaller place, like, and even if it ends up me literally just playing at my local boozer, like then, so I don't think there's, like there's obviously been highs and lows, but I don't think ever sort of jumping ship has ever been has really crossed my mind. No, because it is inherently what I do now. Like every part of me is beans on toast, really. Like, and so the idea of stopping it is pretty far from my mind. I mean, it's hard to think back to but I mean, yeah, no, not really, because even when I think back to before, it was like there was a lot less riding on it because I had my other work and whatnot. So there'd be no reason to stop it because a gig was always, like I was only ever doing it for the good times, basically.
Yeah.
So why would you stop that?
Do you have any fears when it comes to like stepping on stage? And have you ever like, or was it such like a gradual process that you just kind of?
Yeah, I've always felt very at home on stage. Like sometimes there'll be like I mean, I've told crowds of hundreds sort of like secrets.
Yeah.
Like there's something about there's I've always felt very at home, even as like even as a kid, even like primary school plays and stuff like that. I was just always I mean, and I think I love gigs. I love going to other people's gigs. It's like at festivals, like I love watching other bands. But if people are like, what band you really want to, but I'd rather be at my own gig than anyone else's.
Do you get a
No,
thrill
like,
from like showing off? Do you like being a show off?
I mean, I guess so. Like I mean, I'd like to think that when I'm on stage, the first person that's like that's getting the piss taken out of them is me.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether that falls too much into the boasting. My daughter calls it. Like don't boast. Which is is a hard lesson to teach a 7-year-old, but she seems to have grasped that aspect of it. But I think there's a way of performing without necessarily showing off.
Yeah. Do you get nervous? Like, do you
No.
get nervous? Not even.
I mean, I do.
Show?
I'll be honest with you. I do drink a lot. Like you'll be. It's very few and far between that I'm sober on stage. I used to get fucking hammered, like on all sorts as well. I mean, I give up chemical drugs a long time ago, but I'm not, like it's a couple of beers, but that's not through nerves, and if anything, I've tried to I've done some very odd shows in my time. Like and I've always sort of like they're good things to sort of revert back to. I mean, quiet shows are the hardest, but I'd rather play in front of 3,000 people than 3 people. Like there's but there's a again at Glasgow, there's what's it called, the Lost Horizon sauna. There's like a naked stage, and I've always wanted to play.
We haven't been there.
Yeah, it's in one of the saunas. It's like it's there's like an enclosed sauna space, which is like a naked sauna, and they have a stage there where you can play. And I've never actually got around to it, but I'd kind of love to do a naked again because I feel so comfortable on stage. Just want to find out if there's any way that I feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And then you've always got that if people are like, oh my God, the sound's crap and blah, looking like there's going to be a bad gig. It's like, at least we get to wear our clothes, like it's always good to have that kind of like a level to it can get better than. So nerves are if anything, I'm excited to be on stage more than I am nervous. You generally find, I can't never understand when people are late for stage. I'm always like that last 10 minutes. I'm just like, come on, I always want to go on stage early, and it's just sort of like it's just that sort of bit before. It's like it's the longest. The 5 minutes before stage time is the fucking longest 5 minutes of the day. And then the hour will be the shortest.
There's a saying that says nerves are just misplaced excitement anyway. So I think
there you go. Yeah. That's I like that.
And it's actually really refreshing for me to hear you say that you don't get nervous, because I don't really get nervous in front of people. I've acted, I've got on stage, I've sung, I've played bass very badly in a band that I didn't even know what I was doing. and I've never really been nervous. You know, I've always found it exciting. But when people say, well, how can you get over your nerves? It's hard to answer because I was never really nervous.
Yeah,
So,
I don't know what I'd say if someone was to ask me that. Apart from drink.
yeah.
Get smashed. No, you're right. I wonder what advice would be to get over nerves. I think just it's just take the first step, isn't it? Like as soon as I think nerves, even if you are nervous, they soon go when you start doing whatever it is that you've come there to do. And I really love the saying, like the saying stage presence, stage presence. And it's about, you have to be really present. Like I actually can find being on stage almost like kind of like can be like therapy in certain ways. I'm like even like aches and pains can vanish. I can spend all day with a bad back, and for that hour on stage, like my mind is it's just like the power of the mind and being present.
And also the energy that you're getting off the crowd as well. I'm sure that's like rejuvenating.
Yeah, exactly. And like it's weird where I say how that I drink. Like when I'm not playing gigs, I very rarely drink. Like I will, well, maybe not very rarely, but I'd get, like I'll be a different person. If I go to the pub and I have 5 pints, I'm pissed. If I play a gig and I have 5 pints, I'm like, feel pretty straight afterwards. So there is something about it. Definitely does. I actually think I think being on stage got to be very healthy for you, like, and some of the greatest musicians in the world always outlive. You would imagine that it's really bad for you. Rock and roll on paper is supposed to be, very detrimental to your health. But then you look at some of the greatest musicians of our time, and they live long, and they've still got it when they're
Keith Richards is still here.
Yeah, and exactly. I mean, Rolling Stones, Shane McGowan, may God rest his soul. But like a lot of these people that you just would write off could just like they still have have a sort of lust for life, in their in their later stages of their life as well.
So you've traveled the world playing music, and now you do it with a family. How do you balance the two? Has that balance ever felt impossible?
I've been doing these trips to Australia this in January, which is a wicked time to go to Australia. Like there's no gigs really for me in the UK. I go there and there's festivals. It's the middle of the summer. Everyone's up for it and out for going for gigs. So I've been 3 years on the trot in January, and I've found a real natural home for my music out there, and it's great. And I can go there for 1 month. And without being crass, it's sort of like it pays enough to justify me being away from my family for a month. And but it's also my daughter's birthday in January, and it's like, so the last 3 years I've missed her birthday, and she said to me this year, I sort of sat her down again, and she's very understanding about what I do and whatnot. And I said, I'm going to miss your birthday again because I'm going to January again. And she was trying to be understanding. And she was showing me that she was being understanding. But she said, don't worry, Dad, I'll be there for yours. And sort of like inadvertently kind of sticking the knife in, like, and I was like, even not that she meant to make me feel bloody awful, but because she was like, birthdays aren't about you, they're about other people. And I was like, oh man. So there's I'm now, when Ren was younger, we did, she came to Australia and we toured a lot. And there was, when she was in the pram, touring with her was kind of viable, like now, even if now she's at school, so touring's kind of off the cards. But even if it wasn't, Ren at the age she is now, touring wouldn't work for her. Like you couldn't just sort of like, she just wouldn't want to be sitting in like a hotel room each night, whatnot. So but like I don't tour during holidays, like I'm always back on holidays. And I mean, I can't really speak for anybody else, but again, you think on paper, a touring musician is going to be awful for family life. But when I'm home, I am home. I dropped her off today. I'll pick her up, like when I'm home, I do drop-offs and pickups at school. You know, like I'd get involved with the bloody PTA. And when I think there's an element, it's a bit all or nothing, but I still think there's an argument as to whether that's better or worse than, than the factory job that I had when I was growing up. If I was doing that, I would have had to bloody leave early and come back late and be knackered all the time. And
Yeah.
I would imagine some kids go for it a bit better than others, but I'd tour for a few months. I'll come back for a few months over the summer. I do festivals where during the summer holidays, she picks and chooses which ones she comes to. Sometimes she likes festivals. Sometimes she's not into it. Fair dues, but like that we've hung out, haven't we? In
Yeah,
the rain
definitely.
at,
Yeah.
where was that?
Beautiful
Me-
days,
Beautiful
was it?
days. Yeah.
yeah, with the kids running around playing in the back of the van. Yeah, so I
I'm
mean,
sure we'll do it again this year as well.
exactly. Yeah. So it's like, there's, and Ren, she gets up on stage with us, and
Yeah, I was
she's
going to ask, what's that feel like?
amazing. And again, I'd never sort of like want her to presume that she has to do stuff like that. She's always, whenever she asks, I say yes. And it's like pretty soon it's going to be like, when the bookings come through, it'll be like, is Ren gonna be there? Because whenever she does come along, like she steals the show, rightly so. Like she's comfortable on stage, and she's, when we did Beautiful Days, she was like 6 years old, and loving it. So yeah, and I sing songs to celebrate my family as well, which I hope that sort of lands with them. But yeah, it's let's see how it goes, basically. But
Yeah, I think being in charge of your own time is like super key. Like for us as well, we may have a lot of time where we've got to work and stuff, but if we need to be somewhere, like we can pick and choose where we be. So,
exactly.
and most people don't have that. And
Yeah,
that's
Lizzie's
awesome.
self-employed as well. So again, we're quite, like we're quite fluid as a family as to sort of, how we make things work. But we definitely, we see a lot of each other. Let's put it that way. It's not like I go away and that's, and I sort of leave people behind.
And like you said, when you're there, you're there. And I think that's like awesome. That's so
Yeah.
important.
My dad's a musician, and he came off the road when I was born and stopped touring. And I reckon if you asked him, the one thing he would regret in his life is probably that. Because because I think he could have made it work touring and being
right.
being
Okay.
there. But at that time in their lives, they, we're talking 42 years ago, it was like, no, there's no way of keeping in contact. So he had to, if when he was away, he was
Step
completely
away
away.
from it.
So they decided for him to come off the road to bring me up and have a family. And I think, like, actually, if he'd stayed doing that, I think he would be happier still, but
I
yeah,
mean, that's big
like,
talk. I mean, there was an element. Obviously, COVID was, like shit for many reasons, but time-wise, it was a very important time. I mean, I know your little one's same age, so
yeah.
it was like, I stopped touring for those 2.5 years just before Ren went into nursery and school, really, which is an incredible time. And so there was something about that, it was like, well, there was no touring then, but
Yeah,
we,
it's such great timing, and the weather was freaking awesome.
Yeah.
so we spent a lot of that. Yeah, for her age, that was, like that sort of worked out.
Yeah, it was the same for us. Exactly the same. We got to not be at festivals, not be running around like crazy people for an entire sort of year and a half and just having Naya in the garden, like learning how to walk, like it was
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Can you imagine it now? Like if I imagine spending like having rent like a 7-year-old at home
oh no,
for that long without without being able to go to the park is
no,
like hats off to
absolute
all those
nightmare.
people that did
Yeah,
do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. You write about the world around you. Okay, so when you write, your songs reflect the world around you. What do you love most about the world that you see today, and what do you hate?
Bloody hell. I mean, like probably well, I love most, my family and my local community as well. Like I guess I'm getting a lot of uh and music as well. You know, like I've been, the new album that I'm writing at the moment. A lot of it is the positive side of it is a lot of it sort of focusing on the need to make art. You know, like and the celebration of art, not necessarily my own. You know, but just sort of like that encouragement of now and almost of that and as that being one of the last sort of like pillars of hope against, you know, like everything that I hate, which is, you know, like the collapse of world order, which is, you know, like getting pretty terrifying, you know, like at the moment. And it's weird because I was always, you know, like I've always sort of wished for big change, you know, like in the sort of political realm of the West. And you know, and now it's happening, and it's definitely not happening in the way that you know, would have hoped it to be. And so I feel like it's more important to be sort of like, it's weird, isn't it? Because I've always been anti-establishment, and somehow it seems that they've made this thing where it's like the anti-establishment are now in charge, but it's not. It's not. You know, like that's not. I'm anti this establishment as well.
Anti all of
Well,
that.
Yeah. But you know, and
Donald
I
Trump's
don't want to.
blowing
I'm
up the
actually,
original one.
I'm
That's for
working on a
sure.
song about that at the moment, and it's like. But it's like you don't, you know, like you can't be fucking anti everything, you know. And I'm never really am, certainly not in song. You know, I've written songs before that just complain, and no one wants to hear that. And there's also no point putting stuff like that out into the world. I've found, um, and to be honest, I mean, the last record I wrote, Wild Goose Chasers, was like purposely. I was just like, I'm not going to write about this election cycle, you know, like I sort of always had, but I was just like. I just didn't want to, for reasons I don't really know. I just wasn't really feeling it, and I was just like, so I was more of a step back and write about, you know, about the moon and the sort of like the humanity as a whole, and sort of big sort of spiritual questions and stuff like that, which was, you know, like fine and dandy and served a purpose, but you know, like that's not where the next album's going. Let's put it that way. They start commenting and on the fucking here and now again, because you know, because yeah, that, you know, that's what I'm worried about. I'm worried about what's happening to America coming to the UK after this Labour government have done whatever they're doing. You know, like and it getting, you know, fucking ugly for you know for all the marginalised communities in our country.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
It's
You
crazy.
did ask, yeah.
Yeah, no. It's important. I mean, it's important. We've got to let it sit there, and it's, you know, and your music is about this, and it's important that people understand that. Like your lyrics are political, they are, you know, they do challenge views, which is fantastic, you know, and it's things that need to be said, which is what you're passionate about. I mean, it's not all about that. Sometimes it's
Yeah, I
about
mean,
love, it's about
I've
fatherhood,
never thought that
festivals.
I've certainly never set out to change anyone's mind. My favorite songwriter, Todd Snyder, he has a great quote where he's just like, "I don't sing to change people's minds. I sing to ease my own." You know,
Yeah.
like and sort of like. But yeah, I find with when you know, like when the complications of the world, you know, come at me, and you know, you start stressing about them. Again, writing a song is a brilliant way of finding out how you really feel. Basically.
I was gonna ask, are any of your songs like a message to yourself? Like, come on, pull your head in, kind of sort yourself out.
Um, yeah, yes, I guess so. I mean, maybe they all are. You know,
Yeah.
like they're. I'm not sure whether I'd phrase them like that. Like I've got an old song called "The Village Disco," which is, you know, about it. What would you say to your younger self? Like, and over the course of the song, I come to the conclusion that I'm not going to say anything. You know,
Yeah.
like sometimes the best advice is no advice, sort of thing. But yeah, whether they're a message to myself or whether they're a how would you put it? Rather than a message, just a sort of clarification, really.
Yeah.
Just a sort of way of a lot. Yeah, it's a lot of times me working out, you know, how I feel, and and doing that can be, you know, is something that I would encourage everybody to try.
You've got a really loyal fan base. I mean, people are if you're a Beans on Toast fan, you're a Beans on Toast fan. Like it's a massively loyal base. And what do you think it is about your music that connects so deeply with your fans?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, like, try not to think about stuff like that. I think if you get too stuck into that, it's probably unhealthy for the songwriting and the art that you do create. But I mean, it certainly makes me proud when you do realize that. Like, quite a lot of people talk to me about my t-shirts. They say if you wear a someone once said, if you wear a Beans on Toast t-shirt at a festival, you have a great day because you meet so many wonderful people that or that can kind of connect and instantly talk to you. And I was just like, nothing really made me happier than that. I was like, that, what a beautiful thing that is. Plus, I was like, well, do you want to buy another one? We've got them coming out in green. Like there's stuff like that is great when you hear it, and you get, I get all sorts of wonderful messages from people about. I've been involved in more weddings than you would imagine, if you know what I mean. Like either first dances or, little messages and sort of parts of it and stuff like that, and sort of tattoos and stuff. So yeah, I guess, like stuff like that makes me, certainly inspires me, like to keep on doing what I'm doing.
What's your level of fame like? Like, what's it like when you're at a festival and stuff? Because what I witnessed, like with some fans and stuff, it's amazing because you'd never think like when you're with your family and stuff, you have to like all of a sudden create these boundaries and stuff, which you never would have had to do before. It's like, how do you know that you were supposed to do that? And it's just
Yeah,
a
I mean,
weird
like,
thing to see.
I think again with the music that I make, you only really know, people would only really know who I am if they like my music. It's not really pushed down anyone's throat. It's not like, I'm very far away from becoming a sort of household name or anything. Like, there's sometimes who people are without necessarily liking what they do, and I think that's probably where sort of fame kicks in. I live definitely underneath that. So if anybody does, want to, come up and chat or whatever, they'll generally sort of like, they will effectively, they'll know me because if they know my music, they will know enough about me. And, I mean, I love it. I travel around, and I sort of I feel like I mean, at my own gigs, I literally just feel like I've got friends everywhere. I can go, I've been traveling alone for a long time as well, and you sort of really lean into that. If you sort of, once you finish sound check, there's nowhere to go. You just sit in the venue and wait for the first person to come in and start chatting with you, and then you hang out with them all night. So it's like, and then, like if for whatever, if you're walking around at a festival and for whatever reason, you don't, you can just put a fucking pair of sunglasses on, take my hat off.
Yeah, you got to take your hat off.
Take my hat, like instant incognito.
Yeah.
Like, Jack
Might
and
have to wear
Kitty.
trousers as
Yeah,
well.
trousers and some shoes.
Yeah, exactly. I can be incognito in a second, and so that's fine. That's fine as well, like.
What's the most funny story you've got from being on the road? I mean, you're going to have loads, but what's the one?
I mean, I got two books. I got two books out, which I can encourage the listeners to read.
We'll leave links. We'll leave links in the show notes.
Yeah. So they're kind of full of stories, which I could just glance at one. I mean, like, the weirdest thing that ever happened at a gig, which I've talked about this a lot, but the weirdest thing that ever happened at a gig was a chicken appeared on stage.
What?
I was in Cleveland with supporting Skinny Lister on tour. And I've got a song called the Chicken Song. Chicken is actually my power animal. I've got a chicken tattoo on my right arm. And I was just sort of like halfway through this, not the chicken song, just halfway through a song. And I noticed that the crowd, the attention had ventured elsewhere. The energy changed really drastically. And I was like, what's everybody looking at? And the people were looking down. I looked down, and there was a live clucking, trying to fly, scared, terrified chicken on stage.
Oh
and
my God.
I tried
It's time to play the chicken song.
Well, I didn't know what to do. I was like, the animal was clearly in, like traumatized. I
Oh,
sort of tried to, I leant down towards it. Don't know what interaction I had with my guitar. I thought I was going to do. Chicken freaked out. Mike, from Skinny Lister, uh, his name Mike? Yeah. He come over and just grabbed the chicken and like took it into the dressing room, and we found like a little beer crate, calmed the chicken down, but we never found the owner.
so
Like we spent the rest of the night, like in between after Skinny had played, we were like, look, can someone please let us know? This was in the middle of the city in Cleveland. It wasn't in like a,
the chicken's just
out there.
randomly
It
apart.
just, as far as we were aware, just appeared out of nowhere. And we had to find a home for the fucking thing, and yeah, I mean, absolute
I love
bizarre.
that story. And you can obviously hear lots more of stories like that in your books, I'm
Exactly.
guessing.
Yeah. Exactly that.
So that's a brilliant one though. That's so bizarre.
Yeah.
Like really bizarre.
Where the hell did that chicken come from? So when it comes to like money these days, like money as in success, and what is your definition of success to you personally?
Well, when you said the podcast was about success, I was like, it's quite a strange thing, isn't it? Because it's so relative,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Like I think, like I've also known quite a lot of my friends have become very successful musicians, like on a completely different level that, than I am, like literally worldwide pop stars. And like I don't even think if you ask them if they were successful, I think they'd struggle to. There's something about drive, isn't there? I find like almost like the people that I know that are really successful are the people that are sort of chasing more success. And I don't know whether it is a word that I would necessarily link to what I do. I mean, not that I feel unsuccessful, but I wouldn't say I'm not necessarily here driving for success. A lot more I'm driving for, I don't know, contentment. Like I think I'd rather sort of push for that. And again, a lot of with the sort of with my tours and stuff like that, there's within the music industry, there's a general feeling that if you do something and it goes well, the next thing you do is going to be bigger and better. Like if you sell out a venue that's 200 capacity, the next time you go to town, you play a 300 capacity or you play a 500 capacity. And there's a sort of like this natural, the music industry is just built as a sort of as a ramp for people, and things get
Yeah.
better and better and better and better. And it's not, I've literally been doing the same thing. God, like if you take off the first few years, for maybe like 8 or 9 years, I've been playing the same venues and perhaps finding ones a little bit further afield and spreading out a little bit like that, but effectively doing the same thing. And I work really hard to keep that consistency, basically. And I would much rather I'd much rather do that for a long time than sort of like than walk the ramp and then not know what to do once I get to the top of it.
Yeah, that seems really smart because I think like if you just shut up like that and then you drop off, you'd be that guy in the pub like back in the day I used to do this,
Exactly. Yeah,
So I
exactly.
think
And it's like, and it's also, I'm very aware, like the music that I make just doesn't get played on the radio, like it doesn't get synced in movies and stuff, like it's just sort of like, it is very niche, and it's like, and it is a very, as I spoke about, it's a very unique way that I got it here. So if anything, yeah, I just do everything I can to keep it consistent, basically, and just and to keep that as it is, and to keep the festival bookings coming in, and that's just keep writing, recording, releasing, basically.
Yeah, we look at a success as a balance. So, I mean, through the podcast, through asking, different people all over all genres of life
that have
what
different kinds of success,
what
totally
their
different.
terms of success are. And what we're sort of coming up with is this sort of balance aspect of like balancing great family, a career, a happiness, wealth, and health, and it's a balance
Yeah.
of these things that seems to be where everybody's sitting. So that if you strive too far for one of those things, the other things don't happen, so then you're not successful because
Yeah, I
you're
think,
unhappy.
I think if I raise a happy daughter, that would be, like, and I guess that would be, the sort of first mark of success, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Like, and yeah, but yeah, I think you're right. A nice across the board, but yeah, it's not a word that would generally enter my kind of psyche too much. Which is why when you was like, it's a podcast about success, I was like, all right, okay, let me get a think on about that.
What would be the ultimate vision for you? Like, do you kind of forecast like a vision for yourself, or just go along, see where the world takes you?
Yeah, I just like the idea of being like a really old man playing songs.
Yeah,
Like some of which I'm very lucky that I went into folk music, because it's sort of
because age as
naturally,
well.
yeah, it ages well. Exactly. Like some of my favorite, when I got into a lot of my favorite songwriters like John Prine or Guy Clark and, stuff like that, they obviously started younger, but I didn't really know any photos of them from then. I knew photos of these sort of like old dudes that just had sort of like a wicked view on the world and just great songs. And, and so it was just, there's something about, yeah, like I think it might be harder if I followed my early dream of becoming a rapper. I was saying that there's quite a lot of old rappers these days, isn't it?
Yeah,
And like even old drum and bass DJs and stuff like that. It's just generational thing. I think now there's no real necessary age gaps on music, but I think like yeah, if I just want to carry on doing it basically, and I can picture sort of like an older man on a little stage in an arts club somewhere, rolling out the old numbers and still writing new ones.
so has it changed what you like to do over time? Like, because for us, we do less festivals and stuff now, and we're kind of creating a lifestyle that's less about going to festivals all the time, only doing a few
Ones that we love.
festivals that we really love. Like, does it change for you, or are you just on kind of the
I'm
same thing?
still, even this far down, I find it really hard to say no to gigs. I just feel like if I start saying no, they might stop happening. So,
Yeah.
like, I'm just like, yeah, 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 let's do it. Yeah. Um, so, yeah, no, it has, I'm playing as many festivals now as I ever had, sort of like, um, and that's just because more offers come in, so it's just like, I mean, I deal with them differently now, like certainly when I started, the idea of doing two festivals in a weekend would have been crazy because it would have been like, why would you want to leave, like it would be be the first one to arrive and the last to leave, whereas now like I'll do four, sometimes four over the course of one weekend, so I can be pretty like bang bang bang, thank you very much, and sort of move on to the next. But yeah, I mean that's only because I got to be somewhere else, like some of them, Glasgow and Boomtown, and the ones where there isn't stuff either side, I'll still go for the entirety of it.
Is it more professional what you do now in that sense? Like, do you think it's a more professional way of looking at it or not?
No, I still think that again. I still think part of the charm of the show is that it's like it's what it always has been. And I plug the guitar in and play some songs.
Yeah, you got like a giant stage, and it's just you in your
Yeah,
no shoes on, just standing there playing your guitar.
yeah, and it's like the songs can come and go. I still sort of like still happy. I've I've always done really well at like because I fuck up quite a lot. I can mess up my words and this that and the other. And because I used to do it so much, it's kind of like it's kind of like people are upset now if there is like so there's a bit of chaos and a bit of sort of like yeah, for want of a better word, a bit of unprofessionalism, like which sort of like and it's easy if that's what you've got to offer. That's it's an easy thing to bring to the table as well. So I'm happy for that. I'm happy for that to stay as it is.
That's your brand, so like
Yeah,
that's what
exactly.
everybody
Yeah,
expects. It's
which
great.
like, and it's a fine line between being sort of carefree and careless.
Yeah.
Like, but I mean, you just got to find that.
I wanna ask because you've got a tour coming up and people can get tickets for the tour. So
Mm.
tell us where you're going to be, so that people can and where they can get tickets.
So head to my website for tickets, beansontoastmusic.com. And then, right, I'm going to try and do the whole lot, but I'm not sure where we're out to. Liverpool, Manchester, Kendal, Edinburgh, Leeds, Sheffield, Birmingham, Bristol, Cambridge, Colchester, London, Southampton, Plymouth, Cardiff.
Amazing, amazing. So I think everybody could get to one of those gigs for sure.
Hence the nature of the tour. Yeah. Come into a town near you.
Yeah, very soon.
And also there's cool artwork on there that I was seeing, and awesome shirts, and also obviously your albums you can get on your website, but we'll also leave links in the show notes for that as well.
Respect. Well,
Did
thank
you
you
get
very
the
much.
books
I
as
feel
well?
like it's been a success.
Yes.
I feel like there is one question that we always ask right at the end.
Yeah, but I was thinking it was a bit of an awkward question to ask.
I know, but we're going to ask it
It's
anyway.
ruined the last question.
Go
We're
on.
going to ask it. We're going to ask it. So, Jay McAllister, aka Beans on Toast, are you successful?
Sure. Successful in making great podcasts.
Yeah.
I love it. It's been absolutely amazing having you on, and hopefully everybody else has really enjoed it. I mean, I'm sure they have.
I certainly.
He's an entertainer. How could they not?
I know.
I mean, the only shit thing is that we were here. No, just
And I'll see you in Southampton at the Joiners next month.
yeah.
You will
We'll
indeed.
see
You
that.
will indeed. What is the Southampton date?
Oh, now you're testing me.
Yeah, I know.
Hang on, I'll get it up.
I used to run a club night at the Joiners, actually.
What a venue.
When I was underage. And my dad built the stage inside it. I don't know if it's the stage that's still there, but yeah,
hopefully. It's the 25th of March.
25th of March. Okay, cool. Right. We'll see you there.
We'll see you there.
All right. Nice one, guys.
Nice to see you all.
And